I think the best part of boat building is going from something like this to something like that.
Hi, I'm Joe, and welcome to Motor City Boat Werks. Let's get to work. If you've been watching the channel, you know that it's the winter months here in Michigan, and I'm back working on the pocket trawler behind me. Right now, I'm in the process of making sure that the boat is ready to receive all the wire, everything that's going to be electrical going into the boat. Before we ever run a single strand of wire, I need to make sure that I know where it's going from point A to point B, and all of the cutouts, all of the switches, everything has to be installed. This episode's going to be about the nav pod. This box above the helm in the boat is going to hold several navigational items. We're going to talk about that. I've talked about the nav pod before. It's this box that I constructed out of PVC foam board. The commercial name for the material is called Celtec, Sintra, or Komatex. If you're not familiar with this material, it's basically a hard, rigid plastic. It's an extruded type of PVC. I've got an episode where I go through all the details and the differences between various composite boat building materials. You're going to want to check that out. The nav pod is designed to help organize the helm on my boat. One of the things I learned from my experiences cruising is that I like to have a very kind of clean, minimalist helm. I don't like having it cluttered with all sorts of instruments. Now, we all know if you have an older boat and you start adding components to it, especially navigational items, it's very easy to kind of get out of control and have your helm become all cluttered. On the Albin 27, I don't want that. I want everything to kind of have its own particular place. I like having some items up high, some items down low on the dash, and really that's the purpose of the nav pod.
The overhead nav pod is going to contain just a couple of items. Right off the bat, no, I'm probably going to put the VHF radio up there. I also think I'm going to put a switch or a button that'll trigger the air horn if I ever need it. I think I want to also have the windshield wipers for the front of the pilot house, so the switch will be up there, and maybe a small cubby hole, something to hold a pair of binoculars or maybe a flashlight. Keeping in mind that anything I put up in the overhead nav pod, well, the wires have to be run down along the side of the pilot house and back down to the helm or to the master panel. When you're designing your nav pod, remember that it can only be so deep and it can only be so wide. You don't want to obstruct your vision when you're looking out, your front windscreen. Once I've mapped out the items that are going to go in the nav pod, then it's just a matter of doing the cutouts to make sure everything fits.
Now you can make your nav pod or your dash out of some sort of fancy wood. It looks beautiful, but trust me, it becomes a maintenance issue down the road. Someone's got to maintain and keep that wood looking good. That's why I like PVC foam board. You paint it and it looks great for a very long time. The nav pod is going to hold a handful of navigational items. First of all, it's going to hold the marine VHF radio for the boat. Now, you could take a radio and you can mount it to the ceiling, to the hard top of your boat. Of course, that's no issue. But I think it looks really nice having it recessed inside some sort of a cabinet or a box, especially when that box contains other items like the switches for the windshield wiper and maybe also the button for the air horn. You've seen me working on the air horn project over a number of episodes. Well, this is where the button's going to go. If I ever need it, I just reach up, hit the button, and give it a toot. The other thing I wanted to kind of build into the nav pod was some sort of a storage cubby hole. There are a lot of little items that a helmsman likes to maybe have while they're driving the boat. A pair of binoculars, flashlights, your glasses. There's all sorts of small items, and rather than have them kind of flying around adrift on the dash of the boat, it sure would be nice to be able to put them up inside a little cubby hole. You don't have to worry about them getting lost.
If you're interested in learning the specifics of how I chose various components for my Great Loop boat, consider joining the Workers. That's my Patreon. I'll be releasing videos about how I chose some of the items that I'm putting into my boat. I talk about the cost, I talk about various options, I talk about why I chose these particular components. It might be something you're interested in. All right, today I'm in the pilot house here, and I'm going to be installing the nav pod. This is going to go right up top here. We're going to use some marine sealant and 2 bolts to bolt this thing in place. It basically kind of goes like this. Right here, just like that. And we'll get it kind of installed up there, and then be able to begin putting in the different items, you know, into the front of this thing. So let me show you this. So we got this in place now. This is just a dry fit because everything's got to be watertight, and we're still doing some work on the hard top with the radar mount and all this kind of stuff. So, but basically, here is your nav pod. You got the horn button put inside here. This is where the radio is going to go. It will go inside basically like that. It gets put in there with a marine epoxy. There are side mounts that hold this thing in place, but the problem is they don't fit inside the nav pod here. It's kind of a wacky design. So this will just get sealed in place, and it'll be like that. And your radio will go probably here, back here somewhere, something like that. Get this out. I wish this thing was on that side, but they don't make them like that. So this will go back here somewhere, probably.
Can you put it upside down?
Put the radio upside down? You sure you can put the radio upside down? You could do this, but it'll be upside down. Sure. You know? I think it's a bummer. I think if this is over here, like so, then this will tuck up out of the way. Boom, just like that. See? You know what I'm saying? It's the best we can do. All right, so that's that. And then we've got switch here. This is for the windshield wipers. So there's 2 wipers. One right here that wipes on this one. One over there wipes on that one. The center here is an opening porthole. This goes in place here. I don't want to push this in there because it clips in place with these clips back here, and I'll never get it out. But basically, it goes like that. And I installed a blank for something else. I don't know what, but you always need a blank switch to add something else. That's what this will be. This is the wiper. Okay, simple. So this is the canister compressor that goes for the air horn. I covered this in another episode. I did all my experiments trying to get the vintage air horns to work. Finally got some horns that are going to work, and we're happy with the sound. And this is the compressor that powers it. A lot of people were asking questions about, you know, putting in a larger compressor with a tank and belt driven and all this sort of stuff, but we don't have room for that. And the reason I wanted to go with a small canister compressor like this is because it will fit back here inside the nav pod right here. It goes right behind the horn button here, and a hose will come out of it, goes right through the roof, straight to the horns, which will be mounted, you know, either on the radar or right next to it or something like that. All right. So if you haven't seen that episode, make sure you check it out.
There you go.
All right. And then this is the storage box. Boom. Boom. Boom.
everything inside there. It's amazing. You can put your lunchbox inside there. What do you think? What do you think? Is it good? So you can see the nav pod. This is what it looks like. Like I said, this is just kind of a dry fit to make sure, you know, everything is kind of fitting and see if there's any issues and stuff like that. And it also gives me an idea of where I've got to run wires in even the pneumatic hoses to power the air horn and stuff. How's that all going to work? We've got to figure that out. On the back of this nav pod, because these electrical items generate some heat when they're, you know, running, especially the radio and stuff like that. We've got the back of the nav pod here. That's where this piece goes right here, and it bolts on the back here. Let me take a moment to point out that when you're doing any sort of a project that has a vent on your boat, you're going to be installing some sort of a stainless steel vent cover or something like that. You want to make sure that you put a piece of very fine mesh screen behind it. It doesn't have to be too elaborate. It's just got to cover the entire opening, and you can do it right behind the decorative stainless steel vent cover. It'll look fantastic. I've had this problem on a number of boats where I have a nice, beautiful vent cover, but after 1-2 seasons, well, guess what? You've got bug's nests or something's going on behind the vent up inside that space. And in the case of electronics or whatever, well, you don't want, you know, mud dauber nests, spider nests and stuff going on inside there. So basically, like, this goes right on here, and then it screws in place. Boom, like that. Look at that. Okay, how's that look? Good, right? Looks pretty good. Okay. I like it. I like my design. I think it's okay for what it is. It would have been nice, you know, if all this was part of the fiberglass top and had been pre-molded, or some sort of fiberglass piece that, boom, you know, attached to the top here. But this is the reason why I make stuff out of PVC foam board, because once it's painted, I think it integrates pretty well, retrofitted, you know, into, you know, this type of old boat restoration. I hope this answers some of your questions about how the nav pod's going to work, how we're going to be doing the helm. I think at some point we'll talk about the radar and the radar mounting. There's a tower that it goes, and where the horns are going to be, and maybe also the solar panels that are going to be on top of the hardtop here. We've got to talk about all that, kind of do some mock-ups, get an understanding of how all that's going to go, because the real question is, how am I going to run the wires, cables and hoses and whatever to this thing, you know, from down below, which is where the electrical panel is. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do this. I'll be interested in hearing your thoughts on this, if anybody's got some ideas. But basically, we've got to run power to the nav pod for the radio, for the VHF radio, for the horn button, and the relay that goes with it, right? That's all got to be powered, and that gets plugged into the canister compressor here. We've got to run power and fuses up here, and so we're talking, you know, a half a dozen cables of some sort that have got to be brought up here from the electrical panel, which is down here, you know, at the helm. And I'm thinking the way to do this, there's no dead space behind any of this back here. This is essentially the ceiling of the head. The shower is right below here. So there's no way to run cables or anything in here. So everything has to be, I guess you'd call it surface mounted. And the question is how to do that. Portholes are going to go in here. They have teak trim. How do you disguise wires that are going to come from down here up through the dash somehow, probably along over here, and then up here into the box, right? And then there'll be some things that come out of the box plugging into stuff. I think the way to do that, I've been thinking about this, is there is some, it's not conduit, but it's like raceway is what they call it. And it's made of plastic, it's PVC. You attach it with either screws or adhesive, right? Basically, these raceways, you can run wires in it. In your house, you would use it to put in a surface-mounted light switch or something like that. And I think decoratively, it can be, you know, we can put it in here and then paint it so that it matches everything, and the wires are hidden. You don't see the wires. Now, the alternative is to use some sort of loom
something like your corrugated, plastic loom like you use on a boat. But I think that will ultimately be too sloppy. I think we'd rather have something that's kind of clean lines. So either maybe some PVC conduit that's fixed and then painted, maybe some sort of raceway, I think, is really the way to go. And we can go from here all the way to here, back down to here, and then bring it over into the panel here somewhere. Of course, the controls are going to be right here. We'll probably go right into the panel over here in this corner, is what I'm thinking. Or right in here. Or right in here. Because I think we can get a straight shot, which will bring us into behind this bulkhead, and then we have access to everything here. We snake the wires through, just like the steering cable. That's what I think. I don't know. I'm flying blind here, and I'm kind of inventing it as I go. One problem at a time. So there we go. We're making some progress. We're kind of getting everything in position, getting ready to do the wiring. There are times that reach a low point because you can't put things together, can't finish projects, can't get things, together like you're making progress. And I talk about that. It's really kind of depressing, but it's also kind of motivating when you get close to a moment of completion. And all of your ideas that you've had for a long time. I've been thinking about this nav pod for going on 14 years. When all of the pieces kind of come together with the $500 radio and the air horn button and the cubby hole and the PVC foam board construction, and it looks like it's integrated into the dash, well, it's very motivating because you realize at that moment that you have created something, a one of a kind. It doesn't exist anywhere else, and it's your ideas now manifest in front of you. You'll be enjoying it somewhere down the road. You made it happen. And I got to tell you, that's the part that I really like. And as we get further along, working through the electrical system, these problems, all this kind of adding the gear and putting the boat back together, it's just going to be one opportunity after another for all my ideas to come together, and boom, moment of completion. You can see now, I think, why this has to be done this way. You can't just start running wires and then not have worked out how this is going to attach, where you're going to drill holes, where wires are going to be run everywhere. You got to have some plan for that. And sometimes you can't get that plan until you actually put something up, do a dry fitting, and kind of see what it looks like. I hope you got something out of this episode. If you're interested in how I'm rewiring the boat and all the little steps that it's taken to get to this point, be sure to check out my rewiring playlist, where I talk about all the details and all the episodes go through the various things that we've had to do to get to this point. We'll see you next time. Stay motivated.